RJ Davis, the reigning ACC Player of the Year, is back for North Carolina. But what if he's not the Tar Heels' leading scorer?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. It's the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined by our good buddy, Coach Pack Kilby. And Pack, we're in October. That means it's time for What If Wednesday. It's gonna be great. And you're joining us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listener or watch, and we want to send a special shout out to the everydayers, the Locked On Tar Heels insiders, and of course, all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family. Welcome in. Let's get after it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Pack, as we get into it, just a couple quick notes for everybody. First off, you all might have seen the news on Tuesday, but Nico Bundalo canceled his Kentucky visit. What does it mean? Good or bad for North Carolina? Anything to do with Caleb Wilson? We don't know yet, but he ain't going to Kentucky, and we'll take that. So just keep that in mind on the recruiting front. Also, ACC tip-off, which is like the ACC media days for basketball. Women's started yesterday. It's wrapping up Wednesday morning. The men's will start Wednesday afternoon, and then Carolina will be on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. And that means that probably Thursday, maybe Friday, we'll hear more about the ACC preseason poll. We'll hear about ACC preseason all ACC team, which I'm guessing RJ Davis might make this year after the just terrible decision by nobody to vote for him last year. Anyway, Pack, it is What If Wednesday. This is one of my favorite things we get to do. I've got a whole bucket here full of some great questions that we're going to pull out. Just what if scenarios ahead of this season. Some of them good, some of them not so good. And whatever they are, we're going to talk about them and answer them to the very best of our ability. Pack, I love doing this. It's my favorite thing that we've started doing in October, and I'm ready to hit it if you are.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, mixing the bowl up. Here is our first one for today. What if, Pack, Ian Jackson is our leading scorer? This comes from struggling college student Steven. What if Ian Jackson is North Carolina's leading scorer in 2024-25? Pack, get us started.
Well, my first thought is, what in the world happened to RJ? You know,
Exactly.
Either Ian is really good or RJ's been injured. So that could go one of two ways. But we'll just assume RJ's healthy and Ian is the leading scorer. Then I think, that means that obviously Ian has made himself into a great player and has taken advantage of the opportunity. But, man, that means Carolina's offense is super potent, right? Like RJ is obviously RJ and has a chance to be, the all-time leading scorer when it's all said and done. And then, we're saying that Ian is going to be the leading scorer. So that makes Carolina's offense all the more potent. But it does bring about some questions of if we're relying on him so much for scoring, does that mean that our 4 and 5 didn't live up to the hype? So it makes me think of a bunch of different scenarios. But obviously, if Ian's our leading scorer and RJ is still healthy, then our guard play is even better than what we anticipated, and we anticipated to be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm operating with this question under the same assumption here from struggling college student Steven, that in this scenario, RJ is in fact very healthy. And I mean, it is interesting to think about because with Ian, I think he's going to be a little bit of a spurty scorer, a little bit of a streaky scorer, Pack. And so I think the thing I'm going to be watching for with him is consistency. How consistently is he able to score and find his spot? How much will, like when he's on fire like that, how much will RJ defer to that? I think that's something to watch. I think there's a level at which RJ needs to be a little bit selfish this season, but wisely so, right? Like choosing when to call his number and when to call other people's numbers. Here's an interesting thought that crops up into my mind as we're having this conversation. All things being equal, and let's assume the world that we're assuming will happen, where RJ is the leading scorer. What are your assumptions about where Ian will actually probably be in terms of Ian is the third leading scorer or the seventh leading scorer? Where do you think he will actually fall, Pack?
Man, that's a really hard question to answer, because I see this team being somewhat like last year's team, where, one night it was, RJ was the one, but the second leading scorer was Armando or Harrison or Cormac, or in some instances like Elliot would go off for 16 points or so here and there, and it was just like pick your poison type thing. And I see this team being a lot that way because of the versatility that we have and the various mismatches we can take advantage of depending on what type of team that we're playing. So that's a tough question in my mind. Obviously I think of RJ as number one. I think of Cade Tyson as the second leading scorer.
Really?
I do. I think he's going to be very, very much so like Brady Manic-esque, but maybe even more volume. So anyways, and I see him being the second, and then after that, it's like, okay, it could be Ian, it could be Seth, it could be Elliot, it could be J-Wash, Ben Allen Lubin, just like, you never know who it could be. So go ahead and say, I think Ian, probably third, maybe fourth. But I definitely think RJ are one.
Yeah, I think you're cutting out there a little bit, Pack, but you were saying you definitely think RJ 1, Cade 2, and then Ian probably third or fourth. Did I catch that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. And that seems to make a lot of sense to me, because look, Ian is going to be a phenomenal scorer. And I really like where you put this, Pack. I think there's a separation from RJ at the top at, good grief. Like if he could get 20 a game again, that'd put us in a great shape. But then I think after that, you probably got three different guys that are probably all, maybe even four other guys that are all between 10 to 15 points a game. I don't know if it'll be that much variant. Like if you can get that many guys up into double figures, I think a lot of that will depend on how much depth Coach Davis uses this year, which is another question mark. But I think that makes sense, where Ian is like, if I had to put one number on it, I believe he'll be the third leading scorer on this team. And I think it's RJ. And then I keep going back on, it's going to depend on how Carolina uses their personnel, because I can see a world in which J-Wash is the second leading scorer if things break right and he's really doing what he needs to do. But that's a big question mark, right? And so but ultimately, going back to the question, because I don't want to forsake what struggling college student Steven asked us here. If Ian Jackson is the leading scorer, and let's say RJ is second behind him, that would mean crazy things for this team. And I would imagine mean that the offense is operating at a stupidly high pace and that they're scoring a crud ton of points a game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about a world where RJ's not the leading scorer. It's like, what do you even do with that? If you've got someone that scores the ball better than him, it's like, good luck. That's going to be tough to defend. So, I totally agree. I think that would mean the offense is highly efficient, a crazy fast pace, and a lot of space for those guards to operate within, and Ian takes advantage of it. And there is, struggling college student Steven, I think there's a world where Ian is, second. First is far-fetched for me, but with the space he's going to get, it's going to be, very advantageous system for him, and we know how well he can put the ball in the bucket. He has a knack for that for sure. And for Ian, God, who better to learn from than RJ, right?
Yeah.
Like, because he has that ability to score, and now he's going to get to learn from the guy that does it better than anyone in the country. So that's going to be really neat for him, and I think those two are going to be really tough to stop.
One critical word that you use there is space, Pack. I think spacing will be of the utmost importance for this team. Just looking at that, figuring out where we need to be and how to utilize that well. All right, great question from Steven there. Thank you, Steven. Woo, get that out of here. Next, more What If Wednesday coming up, including a question about Cade Tyson's role and exactly what is he going to be doing for this team. We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Pack, we've got ACC regular season winner odds out for basketball. Duke leads the way at plus 135. Sure, fine, whatever. Carolina right behind them at plus 370. Then Wake at 1,000. Miami at plus 1,400. Virginia, Louisville, and Clemson all at 1,500. NC State at plus 2,200. And we'll round it off there with Pitt at plus 2,600. So maybe you think that's a great deal on Carolina. Go check that out. How about the Tar Heels hosting Georgia Tech at Keenan this weekend? Yellow Jackets favored by 5.5 points in this game, Pack. That is unfortunate right there, but we'll see what happens with it. Yes, facepalm emoji is correct. So if you want to get in on that action at FanDuel or anything else coming up, make sure you go check it all out at FanDuel.com. It's America's #1 sportsbook. What If Wednesday rolls on? Let's go back to our bucket here and Pack. Let's see what we're going to pull out next. All right, here we go. This is a long one. What if Cade is our second leading scorer? Oh, Pack, did you write this? What if Cade is our second leading scorer, but can't guard the 4 position, but Drake Powell can? This comes from Edward Inslee. Thanks, Edward. So again, Pack, what if Cade Tyson is basically, I think the premise of this question is, what if Cade is doing a phenomenal job offensively and according to this premise, is starting at the 4, but can't guard well enough at the 4. But Drake is able to. What would you do with that?
Golly, my mind goes to so many places, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of ramifications.
When I look at the logistics of the question, it's like, okay, what would cause Cade to not guard the 4 well? I mean, is it size? Because Cade has more size than Drake, technically. Is it speed? I wouldn't think so because you typically don't associate the 4 with speed. But if it were that, just lateral ability and things of that nature, that's when you get into like the real question marks because you can't just bump Cade to the 3 because that's an even more athletic position, So there's just a lot of like what ifs with that
strength?
Question. I think.
That's another variable.
Right. Yeah. And so could be strength. And so anyways, I just see a lot of different variables here. But that's, the kind of the beauty of this team is in the question, right? Like there's a lot of different avenues and outlets that this team has that we can use to be exactly who we need to be when we need to be it, So I think more than we've ever seen in the last few years, this team can be very offensive, defensive as far as substitutions go. And even as far as matchups go. And I would not be surprised if we saw some of that. I think in my mind, I'm thinking offensively, Elliot, RJ, Ian, Cade, and J-Wash. And it's like, okay, how in the world do you stop that and all that spacing and all that athleticism? And then defensively, you're looking at Seth Trimble, Ian Jackson, Drake Powell, Jalen Withers, Vin Allen Lubin. That's the fastest 5 guys on the court in the country, So you can go a million different ways with that, and it's just like, so to get to the question, really, I'm just saying this team is really versatile, and it wouldn't shock me if Cade was our second leading scorer, but we had to do something different defensively from time to time. But obviously, you don't want to rely on matching up to your opponent all the time. And so you want to have things you can hang your hat on. And that would be something the staff would have to determine. Do we want to rock with this guy that's scoring the ball really well and sacrifice maybe on the defensive end some, or vice versa? Do we want to play really good defense and maybe sacrifice on? And that's really a catch-22. But for me, I think Cade's team and his three-point shooting and his quick release is going to be one of those things that we just can't live without. So I think that we have maybe, especially since I think we have to sacrifice defensively some because of the benefit he's going to bring offensively. And even in his leadership role too, right? I think he's got the experience and things of that nature that are going to be impactful on the court. I've compared, I'll use it again, Brady Manick. Brady's not the best defender. But he's the fire, he was the energy, he was the shot making, he was the floor spacing that we need this season. And I see Cade being a lot of that for us this season, even if he does lack some defensively.
Yeah, because like going back to Brady, he was certainly not known for his defense by any stretch of the imagination. But what I love that he did was he didn't let that be a detractor for him. He instead leaned into the opportunity to work at really growing defensively and to say like, look, I might not be leaky, for example, but if I can at least hold my own, that puts us in the position we need to be in to be able to do, enough to slow things down. And if that's, if I can score 14 and I can hold Paolo Banchero, who usually scores 16, to 12, then that's a net positive for our team, right? Like, so it's like that kind of thing. Also baked into this question is the assumption that Cade will be starting at the 4. There's a couple other things. I think, Pac, that is the assumption that you and I are both operating under right now, but he might start at the 3 and you get somebody like, let's say Jalen Withers is reaching the levels we want him to and getting that consistency. Knowing Coach Davis and looking at what he did last year with Paxson Wojcik and Elliot Cadeau at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't be shocked in any way if the season started with the starting 5 of Elliot, RJ, Cade, and the Jae'lyns, and given Ian and Drake an opportunity to come off the bench for a little bit, and then maybe one or both of them are ultimately inserted into the starting lineup. I don't know, but I think we do need to acknowledge that possibility too. Like, it is not set in stone that Kade Tyson is going to be the starting 4. Also, I think to your point, there's the possibility that his defense isn't great, but it's good enough. And I guess that's kind of similar to what I was just saying a second ago, but it's like, what is that balance of like, dude, he's setting the world on fire offensively and he's just not getting taken out behind the woodshed defensively. And that's good enough because of what he's giving. And so, that's a thing too. But then if Drake is good enough to start at the 4 defensively, as this question asks, I think it also then depends on what Ian's doing, because if Ian is forcing his way into the lineup, that messes with this too. If not, you do shift Cade to the 3 and just bring Drake in at the 4 or whatever it may be. And so ultimately, Pac, I guess that leads me back to the versatility that you talked about, that Carolina is going to be able to employ this year.
Yeah, and I was just sitting here thinking, we've talked about all these people, and we really haven't even mentioned Seth Trimble that much. Yeah, but Seth Trimble maybe guarded the most as effectively as anyone last year outside of Armando Bacot. Yep. And when you start looking at it, like, if he is forcing in and possibly, I mean, there's still a world where Seth forces his way in there too, and not necessarily at the 4, but you can see him come at the 3, which potentially frees at the 4 or 8. It just so much versatility with the. It's really going to be intriguing to see how what we do. I think because the more traditional route, which he's shown he will do, and play the guys that have been there, and then as the season goes on, we learn more about them, those things change. So it's just a lot.
Yeah, Pac's cutting in and out there. I think his he just cut out, but basically what he's saying, if you're not able to tell, is the idea that we haven't really talked all that much about Seth, and Seth Trimble, and we got to think about the idea that he is a capable not only perimeter defender, but somebody who can guard in the post, and whether that's like playing at the three as needed from time to time, and could be somebody that like fronts the post and has help on the baseline side, whatever that needs to be. I know that's something that the Coach Pack and Coach Rob have talked about on occasion, of like there are different ways to skin this cat defensively, and we need to wait and see what those kind of things are. So this is a great question here, and one that I think just forces us to think about all these different lineup combinations that are potentially available to the Tar Heels this year. And so we'll continue to process that. And I'll just say apologies for the pack service kind of going in and out there a little bit. We're going to get that squared away as we get to our next break. So one more What If Wednesday question coming up for today here in just a second. Now we're going to take a little look at some Elliot Cadeau conversation. We'll do that coming up here in just a second. Right after I tell you about GameTime, going to live events is the absolute best. Like, think about this Saturday. You can go to the football game and then go to the blue-white scrimmage. And I tell you, man, I'm looking so much forward to making new memories this college sports season. Well, great news. When you're getting tickets for this year, GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. What happens is Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on the best seats, so that you don't have to waste your time wading through all the fluff. So whether it's game time ticket coverage, the lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat in the app, GameTime has got you covered. Like I said, 4 weeks from today is the tip-off of the regular season. Carolina is hosting Elon. Great deal, an upper deck sideline seat, section 209 row Q for just $36 each. I think that's a great deal getting in the door. If you don't want to spend quite that much, cheapest ticket I found was $21 to get in. And reminder, you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you get $20 off. So you could get to this game for $1. Again, create an account and redeem code for LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, moving into the third segment and our last What If Wednesday question of the day. And I think we got Pac's internet situation all squared away now. He looks clear and unpixelated, and that's a good sign, both for audio and video. Welcome to podcasting, folks. It's how we do. All right, let me pull out one more for today. All right, Pac, here we go. You ready for the last one?
Let's do it.
Ooh, this is in opposition of something I mentioned earlier this week. So this will be a fun conversation. What if Elliot Cadeau's shot doesn't take the jump that it needs to, or doesn't take the jump that we are seeing and hearing from Coach Davis? What will that mean for the North Carolina Tar Heels, Pat Kilby?
Well, I just don't know how much that changes the ceiling of our team. And now I'm going to take this from a glass half full approach. I think we did really well last year, considering Elliot didn't shoot the ball that well. And I think this year we have a chance to be even better than we were last year. And a lot of people might be like, what are you talking about? We have a lot of question marks with the 5, and we don't have Harrison, and we don't have Cormac. This team, more so than any team that we've had before, fits modern basketball.
Yeah.
We have athleticism, we have versatility, we have shooting, we have guard play, we have speed. We're playing with pace again. And we have defensive versatility. And I just really like this team. So where I'm headed with this is would I be disappointed if EC's shot is not what we hope it's going to be? And what I should say with that is my hope is that he's just 33.3%. If he can just hit 1 out of every 3, that's enough to keep a defense honest, to make them have to respect it. And that's a point per possession, basically. So I'm all about it. But if he, for some reason, isn't to that level, I still feel like this team can go accomplish what they want to accomplish because of how well versed we are. And, just in the first segment, we talked about there's a chance that Ian Jackson could be the second leading scorer or the first leading scorer. RJ's a great scorer. I think Cade Tyson's our second best scorer. We talked about all this scoring, and not one time did we mention Elliot Cadeau. So
Right.
my point is he doesn't have to be a great shooter or scorer. He's the guy that runs our break, and he facilitates the ball, and he makes great plays, and he makes our team unselfish, and he makes us go based on the way he plays the point. But he doesn't have to score for us to reach our potential. Now, if he does, it just makes our chances that much better. But to me, if it's not there, we're still going to be okay. What do you think?
Yeah. Quickly, let me just say, I was running some numbers while you were talking, Pack. Last year, Elliot was 10 of 53 from three-point range, which was 18.9%. And that's not great, but it's also not like for modern college basketball or modern basketball, it's not a massive sample size for a guard. For example, just 7 more made threes would have gotten him to 32.1%. Just 8 more made threes would have gotten him to 34%. So it's with that small sample size, it's not that many more made threes to get there. That's like 1 more made three every 3 games or so, Pack, right? Like if we average that out, that's not that much. If he can be that much better, that gets him to the number you're talking about. And so I just want to kind of give some context for what going from 19% to 33% looks like. It's not that wild a leap. And with the strides he's taken this offseason, you would expect that to be able to happen. But if it doesn't, here's the truth of the matter. Elliot, what makes him special and sets him apart is never going to be his three-point shooting, right? Like, and I mean, he might grow and get better at it, but what makes him so special and unique as a basketball player is his vision, his ability to get ahead with the pass or the dribble, his ability to penetrate, his ability to find guys in places and in ways that other people can't. That's where he shines. And so if he can do what you said, just enough to keep defenses honest, that makes those other skill sets that much more potent, Pack, and makes the skill sets of Cade Tyson and RJ Davis and Jalen Withers and Jalen Washington and Van Allen Lubin and Seth Trimble and Ian and Drake and everybody that much more potent because of what he's doing. I truly, honestly believe part of why RJ was as good as he was last year is because of what Elliot Cadeau does for RJ's skill set. And that is encouraging to me. So I think if RJ's shot, to answer the question, if Elliot's shot doesn't take the jump it needs to, it does certainly lower Carolina's ceiling because you're going to have situations like the Alabama game. You're going to have situations like the Duke game where, they were backing off of him. But I loved that because then he and RJ figured out some wrinkles to say, screw that. We're still going to cook your grits, right? And we're still going to make, to use the phrase, Pack, we're starting to try to work in. We're still going to make this kitten purr, baby. And so, right, like there are ways to figure it out. And so ultimately my answer would be if Elliot's shot doesn't take the jump it needs to, it lowers Carolina's ceiling, but it is not backbreaking.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of to maybe offer, a point to what you're just saying. I think if there's a game like an Alabama game, or there's a game where Elliot's just basically getting dared to shoot and he's not hitting the shots, that's where I think our versatility is really important, right? Because there's always the guys that are coming off the bench that can, that we trust to make plays, and the lineups we can use. That's where I think this team can really benefit is it can't be everybody's off night, right? Like if Elliott's having an off night and he can afford to with this team, okay, here comes a backcourt of RJ and Ian, and maybe move Drake to the 3, and then you still got Cade at the 4 and Jay Wash at the 5, and there's just tons of scoring out there still. It's not like are we forsaking a little bit with Elliott's vision and everything? Yeah, absolutely. But we're also probably a little bit better on the defensive end with that lineup. So there's just a lot of things that we can do to help offset, if Elliot's shot doesn't improve. But obviously, best case scenario, it does, and we don't have to worry about that.
Confidence is going to be a key with his shot, right? Like he's got to be able to trust it. And you know that Coach Davis is going to be working to instill that trust in him and that confidence in him. Heck, let me ask one more kind of question here with Elliot's shot. How many threes are you hoping he'll take this year? Last year, he took 53. It averaged out to 1.4 threes a game. What would you like to see both like his total and threes per game at?
I don't have a problem with the 53. And the thing is, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We talked about our scoring options, and he wasn't one of the guys that we mentioned. And truthfully, Elliot is really good with the ball in his hand and attacking the rim. And you mentioned it. He can get ahead of you with the dribble as good or better than anybody else in college basketball. And I think he needs to take advantage of that and not rely so much on the three-point line. Now, there's obviously times he's going to have to hit some shots. So, to me, I think, that 60 to 75 threes in the season and hit it at a 33% clip would be just perfectly ideal, because that means he's a threat, but he's not relying on that. He's just keeping the defense honest, and he's still playing his game and to his skill set. So, I think for me, somewhere between 60 and 75 threes would be the sweet spot.
Yep. Which would mean making 20 to 25 to be at that 33%, 20 out of 60 or 25 out of 75 would be kind of what our hope is for Elliot. That's what we'll be looking for. So, man, Pack, great conversation. Love What If Wednesday. We got a couple more ahead of us here before the season starts, but man, the weeks are running shy. So, we got some more What If Wednesday questions still in the hopper, ready to come for next week. If you want to get some in, please make sure to send them along to us. If you haven't subscribed already to the show on audio and video, please make sure you do that so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. Literally a week from today, Carolina plays at Memphis. A week from yesterday, because it's Wednesday as you're listening to or watching this. Carolina plays at Memphis. We will go live after that game to talk about it. Maybe Pack will be able to join me out. We're not quite sure on schedules yet. We're going to keep our fingers crossed on that one and see. But I will definitely be with you. So hit that bell notification on YouTube so you get notified when I go live, and you can just tap right on in and make sure you're part of the action. If you're not part of our Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to have you there. It's free to join, and the link is in the show notes. Now's the time to get in if you're not already, because the season's about to start. And if you're not one of our Locked On Tar Heels insiders, where you get direct conversation with me, you get to see all my stats and charts and data and record book and all of that, which I'm about to update ahead of the new season, you're going to want to make sure you have access to that. Come on in, 2 weeks free to check it out, and then it's just $5 a month after that. You know the drill, guys. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, Pack, tell them what it is.
Peace.